Hey there, beautiful souls. You're listening to Living Inspired with Autism, where we shatter the limits of what's possible while raising an autistic child. I'm Antoinette, and today we're diving deep into something that affects nearly every autism family. I work with sleep, but we're not just talking about tired kids. We are talking about exhausted parents, strained relationships, and most importantly, hope and solutions that actually work. You know, this topic is deeply personal for me because I remember those endless nights with Max when sleep felt like this impossible dream. There'd be 3 a.m., both of us wide awake, and I wonder if I'd ever get a full night's sleep again. Sound familiar? I know so many of you are nodding right now. Let me paint you a picture that might feel very familiar. It's midnight. You finally got your child to sleep after hours of trying. You collapse into bed absolutely exhausted, and just as you're drifting off, footsteps. They're awake again. And this isn't just one night. This is your life, isn't it? I was working with a mom recently, let's call her Amanda, who told me something that really broke my heart. She said, I used to think I could handle everything, but after 3 years of sleeping in 2-hour chunks, I barely recognize myself anymore. I see so many heads nodding right now. We need to talk about this, beautiful souls, because the exhaustion you're feeling, it's real, it's valid, and most importantly, there's hope. Now, before we dive in, I want to share something that changed everything for me and Max. We spent years struggling with sleep, trying every technique in the book, but it wasn't until I started understanding sleep from his perspective that things began to shift. You see, I was approaching it from my neurotypical understanding of sleep when Max's beautiful autistic brain was experiencing it completely differently. So let's talk about what's really happening in our children's minds and bodies when it comes to sleep. And I promise you, this isn't going to be another list of sleep hygiene tips that don't work for our kids. We're going to dig deep into understanding why sleep is different for our autistic children, and more importantly, how we can support them and ourselves in getting the rest that we desperately need. Did you know that research suggests up to 80% of our autistic children experience sleep challenges? It's crazy. But here's what fascinates me. It's not just about difficulty falling asleep. Our children's sleep patterns are as unique as they are, and understanding this was my first step towards helping Max find his way to better sleep. So let's talk about something that revolutionized my understanding of Max's sleep: the science behind why our autistic children experience sleep differently. But don't worry, I'm not going to get all technical on you. I'm going to break this down in a way that will make you say, oh, now that makes sense. So first, let me share what happened when I finally understood about melatonin. You know, that natural hormone our bodies produce to help us sleep. I used to get so frustrated when Max would be wide awake at midnight, bouncing with energy. Then I learned that many autistic children produce melatonin differently. Imagine your body's sleep timer being set to a completely different time zone, and that's often what's happening with our kids. One of my clients, Lee, had a beautiful aha moment about this. Her daughter, Gemma, would be up until 2 a.m. every night, and Lee was exhausted from trying to force an earlier bedtime. And when she understood about melatonin patterns, she told me it's like I've been trying to make the sun set at noon. And that shift in understanding changed everything for them. But here's where it gets really interesting. And this is something I wish someone had told me years ago. It's not just about the melatonin. Our children's sensory experiences don't just switch off at bedtime. Remember how Max would seem more active right when it was time to go to sleep? I realized that the quiet of bedtime actually made him more aware of every little sensation. A tag on his pajamas, the sound of the heating system, even the feeling of his own heartbeat. Let me share another story that might hit home. I was working with a family, let's call them the Johnsons, whose 8-year-old would take hours to fall asleep. They had tried literally everything. Weighted blankets, white noise, melatonin supplements, everything. Nothing worked consistently. And when we really dug into it, we discovered that their son was experiencing what I call the sensory snowball effect. The quieter it got, the more his body noticed every little thing. Here's what we did that changed everything. Instead of trying to eliminate all the sensory input, we created what we called his sleep sensory recipe. Just like how you might have a specific recipe for a favorite meal, we found this perfect combination of sensory inputs that helped his body recognize it was time for sleep. Now, for some of our kids, it's deep pressure. That's why weighted blankets can be magical. For others, it's specific sounds or even complete silence. Max taught me that what works one night might not work the next, and that's okay. It's about having a toolbox of strategies rather than a single solution. Now let's talk about something that often gets overlooked, the anxiety component. Our children's amazing minds don't just stop processing when we turn the lights off. One mom in our community described her daughter's bedtime anxiety perfectly. It's like her brain is a computer with too many tabs open and she can't find the close all button. So what do we actually do about all of this? Let me share what's worked, not just for Max and me, but for hundreds of families I worked with. And I promise these aren't your typical just establish a bedtime routine suggestions. We are going deeper than that. So remember Lee and Gemma? They created what they call their sleep sanctuary. Now this wasn't just about blackout curtains and white noise, though those can be amazing tools. They actually mapped out Gemma's sensory experiences throughout the entire home. They realized that the path to Gemma's bedroom went past the humming refrigerator, under buzzing hallway lights, and through what Gemma called the echo zone, all things that ramped up her sensory system right before bed. And here's what they did. They created a sensory wind down path. They turned the nighttime journey to bed into a gradual stepping down of sensory input. It's like creating a gentle runway for landing into sleep, rather than expecting our kids to make a sudden stop from full alertness to sleep. But let me tell you about the biggest awakening with Max. I was so focused on his bedtime routine that I completely missed how his entire day affected his sleep. One particularly rough night, Max used his communication device to tell me something profound. He said, "Mama, my body remembers the whole day when it's quiet." And guys, that was an absolute game changer. We started looking at sleep not as something that begins at bedtime, but as the natural conclusion to how we structure the entire day. Think about it. If our children's bodies and minds are processing experiences differently, shouldn't we be thinking about sleep preparation from the moment they wake up? Here's what this could look like in practice. One family I work with created what they call sensory stepping stones throughout the day. Instead of saving all the calming activities for bedtime, they spaced them throughout the day. Their son does heavy work activities after breakfast, has dedicated time for his intense interests midday, rather than just right before bed, and they gradually reduce sensory input as the day progresses. But let's talk about you for a moment, beautiful souls, because here's the truth. We can't help our children find peaceful sleep if we are running on empty ourselves. Remember Amanda, who I mentioned earlier? She made a profound observation. I was so focused on getting my son to sleep that I forgot how to sleep myself. This is where I want to share something really practical, the concept of sleep shifts. This isn't about taking turns being exhausted. It's about creating sustainable rest patterns for everyone in the family. One couple I worked with divides their night into zones. Each parent has designated deep sleep times when they're completely off duty, wearing earplugs if needed while the other is on call. And they're both getting less total sleep, but the quality of sleep is so much better. So let's talk about something that makes a huge difference but often gets overlooked. Creating what I call sleep success moments. These are small wins that build confidence for both you and your child. When you start celebrating what you call peaceful moments rather than focusing on actual sleep, your child might not have slept through the night, but they learn to lie quietly and listen to soft music. That is a win. You know, Max taught me something beautiful about this. Instead of seeing his nighttime waking as a failure, we started treating each wake up as an opportunity to practice our calming strategies. It completely changed the energy of those late night moments. No more frustration, just quiet connection. And Maria, a single mom in my community, did that, transformed their nights. Her daughter would wake up 4 or 5 times, each wake up becoming increasingly stressful. Maria started keeping what she called a sleep success journal, but here's the twist. Instead of documenting the problems, she wrote down one thing that went right each night. For example, she fell asleep easily after the second wake up, or she used her calming tools without prompting. Now, this may sound simple, but it's powerful. When we focus on progress rather than perfection, we start seeing patterns of success rather than cycles of failure. So, how about talking about the challenging times? Because we all have them. Holidays, schedule changes, illness. These can throw off even the best sleep routines. One dad in my community, James, came up with what he calls a 90-10 rule. It's an aim for your strategies to work 90% of the time and have grace with the other 10%. Here's what this actually looks like in practice. Maybe your child has finally settled into a good sleep pattern, and then boom, daylight saving hits and they get sick, or there's a change at school. Instead of seeing this as starting over, think of it as practicing flexibility. Your toolbox of strategies doesn't disappear during challenging times. It just needs some adjusting. Now, before we wrap up, I just wanted to share something that brings tears to my eyes every time I think about it. Remember Amanda, who felt like she'd never sleep again? Last month, she sent me a message that said, "For the first time in 4 years, I woke up feeling rested, not just physically, but emotionally. We still have rough nights, but now I know they're just nights, not a whole story." And that's what I want for each of you, beautiful souls. Not perfect sleep, because let's be real, that's rare for any parent, but peaceful sleep. Sleep that comes from understanding your child's unique needs, having strategies that actually work, and most importantly, knowing that you're not alone in this journey. Let's do something practical right now. Take out your phone, open your notes, and write down one small step you can take tonight. Maybe it's creating a calmer path to bedtime. Maybe it's starting that sleep success journal. maybe it's just giving yourself permission to rest when you can. Remember, you are not just helping your child learn to sleep. You're teaching them that rest is important, that their unique needs are valid, and that solution comes from understanding, not forcing. Okay, thank you for joining me today, beautiful souls. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with another parent who needs to hear they're not alone. Until next time, remember, you're not failing because sleep looks different in your home. You're actually succeeding at understanding and supporting your unique child. Keep shining bright. You've got this.